You're pulled over on the side of the road. Maybe it was your speed, maybe a light, maybe nothing you even noticed. The officer walks up to your window and then he says it. "Step out of the car, I'm going to check your vehicle." And right there, most drivers think they're down to two options: fight it or just let it happen. But there's a third option, and almost nobody knows it's there. Stepping out of the car and consenting to a search of that car are not the same thing, not legally. And that difference can matter later if the search is challenged. If you watch this video to the end, you'll know the answers to the questions drivers are actually searching right now. Can police legally order you out of the car? Can they search it after that? Can you say, "I do not consent"? And does that actually do anything? What happens if they call a canine? What if they say they smell weed? And what can you say in that moment that doesn't make the stop worse? Those are real questions. We're going to go through all of them. And if you have a teenager who drives, this is the kind of moment they need to understand before they are ever pulled over. And if you want calm, practical rights videos without the yelling and confusion, subscribe to US Legal Awareness. Now let's break this down. Here's where most people get lost, and it's not their fault. A command is something an officer tells you to do. Consent is permission you give voluntarily. Maybe the officer touches the back of the car, shines a flashlight inside, or asks you to step out. But none of those moments automatically equal consent to search. In the moment, standing on the side of the road, officer in uniform, cars passing, a command and consent can feel identical. Someone with authority is telling you what to do. Your instinct is to go along. But obeying a command and giving consent are two separate legal events. And when drivers treat them as one, that's when a routine traffic stop becomes a full vehicle search the driver never actually agreed to. That's the trap. That's what this whole video is about. So let's answer the first question directly. Can a police officer order you out of your car? During a lawful traffic stop, generally, yes. The Supreme Court addressed this in a case called Pennsylvania versus Mims. The court held that once a vehicle is lawfully stopped, an officer can order the driver out of the vehicle. The reasoning was officer safety. The officer doesn't know who's in that car or what's in the console. Getting the driver out reduces certain risks. A later Supreme Court case, Maryland versus Wilson, applied a similar rule to passengers during a lawful stop. So if you've been wondering whether you have to step out, the honest answer, in most circumstances during a lawful stop, is yes. That part may be a lawful order. And this is important. That is not the moment to lock the door, refuse to move, or start citing case names at the officer's face. That's not legal awareness. That's escalation. And it makes everything worse. Step out, calmly, slowly. Keep your hands visible. But here's the thing, and this is the whole point. That step does not open your car. Can they search after ordering you out? Getting out of the vehicle does not give police permission to search it. Those are two different things legally. That is where your Fourth Amendment rights come in, the basic constitutional protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. And during a traffic stop, that protection doesn't disappear just because you stepped outside the car. For a search to happen, officers generally need one of a few things: your consent. Probable cause, meaning facts and circumstances that would give officers a legal basis to believe evidence or contraband may be in the vehicle. A warrant, something in plain view. A search connected to a lawful arrest. An inventory search in certain circumstances. Or another recognized legal exception. Courts have said this clearly. A traffic citation alone doesn't automatically justify a full vehicle search. That came out of a case called Knowles versus Iowa. Just issuing you a ticket doesn't open your trunk. Stepping out of the car doesn't check any of those boxes either. So what is the most common reason vehicles actually get searched during traffic stops? Consent. The driver gave it, usually without realizing it. Picture this. You're standing outside your car. The officer looks at you and says casually, "You don't mind if I just take a quick look, right?" And the driver says, "Sure. I've got nothing to hide. Go ahead, I guess." Any of those responses can later be argued as consent, depending on the full circumstances. And the scary part is, the driver may think they were just being polite, but in court, that politeness can sound like permission. Courts look at the totality of what happened when deciding whether consent was freely given, and those decisions are fact-specific. If you said, "sure," even if you weren't fully clear on what you were agreeing to, that can be enough to make the search legal. This is called a consent search. Legal experts who study traffic stop data often point out that consent searches are one of the most common ways vehicles get searched. Not warrants, not probable cause determinations. Just a driver saying, "go ahead," because they felt like they had no choice, or they wanted to seem cooperative, or they didn't know they could say no. You can say no, calmly. That's what this video is about. The exact phrase. So what do you actually say? This is the line, and it works because it does two things at the same time. "Officer, I am complying with your order to step out, but I do not consent to any searches." That's it. You're not arguing. You're not resisting. You're not accusing the officer of anything. You're telling them clearly, "I'll do what I'm lawfully required to do, and I'm not giving permission for anything beyond that." If this stop ever becomes a legal issue, and most don't, but some do, your attorney will be able to point to that moment. You didn't fight the officer. You didn't give consent either. That separation matters. It preserves the issue for court. It doesn't guarantee any particular outcome, but it keeps the door open for a legal challenge later. The pressure moment. Now here's what happens next. Because officers are trained to respond when someone declines a search, he might say, "If you've got nothing to hide, why won't you let me check?" He might say, "I'm going to call a dog out here anyway." He might say, "This is going to take a lot longer if you don't cooperate." None of those are necessarily illegal things for an officer to say, and none of them require a long response from you. Do not explain yourself. Do not tell them what's in the car and what isn't. Do not argue about whether they have the right. None of that helps you. If they ask again, you say again. Same tone, same words. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." That's your complete answer. Your power in that moment isn't in winning an argument. It's in staying calm and being clear every single time. K9 question. What about the dog? This is one of the most searched questions on this topic, and the answer has some important layers. At the federal level, courts have said that a traffic stop has a natural scope, the time reasonably needed to deal with the reason for the stop, writing the ticket, running the license, checking registration, that kind of thing. The Supreme Court addressed this in Rodriguez versus United States. The general principle that came out of that case is that officers can't just tack on extra time to a stop, waiting for a drug dog, for example, without having independent, reasonable suspicion that something else is going on beyond the traffic violation itself. But how courts apply that rule can depend heavily on the exact facts and timing of the stop. So if the stop feels like it's being extended for no clear reason, the paperwork is done, the ticket's been written, nothing is moving, it's not confrontational to ask, quietly and respectfully, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" That's a legitimate question. It puts the issue clearly on the record. Either the officer says you're still detained or tells you you're free to leave. One important note. Don't tell the officer that you know 10 minutes is the legal limit or that you've read the rules. There is no single universal number. Courts look at the totality of what happened. Saying something like that on the roadside usually doesn't help. It often just creates friction. Ask the question. Keep it simple. Keep it calm. The talking trap. Let's talk about something that causes more problems than almost anything else in these situations. Talking too much. Not because honesty is bad, but because nervous talking, filling silence, over-explaining, trying to seem like you have nothing to hide, can create problems you didn't have before. Think about these questions. Where are you coming from? Whose bag is that in the back seat? Why are you nervous? What's in the trunk? These feel like conversation. They're also investigation. Anything you say can and will be used, and drivers who answer everything trying to be helpful sometimes hand over the exact information that justifies a deeper search. You have a Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. In some states, you may still have to provide your name or basic identifying information, but that is different from answering investigative questions. So if the questions go beyond the basics of the stop, you are allowed to say, "I choose to remain silent," not with attitude, not as a challenge, just calmly, once, and then stop talking. Marijuana, firearms, DUI, K-9, state law. Here's something that genuinely matters depending on who's watching this. Several situations in a traffic stop are heavily dependent on state law, and giving one national answer on these would be misleading. If there's marijuana in the vehicle, even in a state where it's legal recreationally, the question of whether odor alone creates probable cause varies by jurisdiction. Courts are not uniform on this. Do not assume your state's legalization law protects you from a search. If you have a firearm in the car, some states have mandatory disclosure laws. You are required to tell the officer. Other states don't have that requirement. You need to know your state's rule before you're ever in that situation, not while you're in it. Field sobriety testing and implied consent for DUI situations vary by state as well. These are areas where a general YouTube video can give you a framework, but a licensed attorney in your state gives you the actual answer. If any of these apply to your life regularly, it's worth 1 hour to get that right. What if they search anyway? Here's the part nobody wants to hear, but it's the truth. Saying, "I do not consent," does not physically stop a search from happening. If an officer determines they have probable cause, based on something they see, something they smell, information they have, they may proceed with a search regardless of your refusal. That search can potentially be challenged later in court. That's where the legal fight happens, not at the roadside. So if they search anyway, do not touch the officer. Do not block the search physically. Do not grab anything from the vehicle. Do not raise your voice. Say once, clearly, "Officer, I do not consent to this search." Then stop. Let it happen. Remember everything you can. What was said, when, what the officer did. Write it down the moment you can. Contact an attorney. The phrase preserves the issue for court. That's its job. It's not a magic shield. It's a legal record. The roadside is not the courtroom, but what happens at the roadside determines what tools your attorney has in the courtroom. So here's what to carry with you. If you've ever searched what to do when pulled over by police, this is the answer most of those guides don't go deep enough on. Step out does not mean search. A command is not consent. You can comply with a lawful order and still, calmly, clearly, refuse permission to search your vehicle. Those two things can happen at the same time. You don't have to choose between respecting the officer's authority and protecting your own rights. "Officer, I am complying with your order to step out, but I do not consent to any searches." One sentence. No argument, no escalation, no accidental permission. Stay calm, stay clear, and if the issue exists, let it live in court, where it belongs. The roadside is not the courtroom. Know that. Remember it. It might matter more than you think.